Every day, you essentially pay your dues by doing the harder thing when it's the right thing to do.
Dr. Dave Tilley, thank you so much for joining me today.
Chad, my man, I'm repping Vaughn today for you.
I saw that, man. The orange, the old school orange with what is that? I think it's blue silhouette and white writing.
I'm proud of my old school vintage first edition public.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, this thing's a legend. This thing's legendary.
So old. We're gonna have to send you a Barbell Mobility t-shirt. We just got some of those in. We're trying to stay under control on that though. You know, we don't want to go too crazy with that kind of thing and eat too much into the income coming in, you know, but appreciate you joining me being the Barbell Mobility Podcast. Of course, we're going to talk about mobility, and you yourself are a physical therapist. And now one interesting fact that I want the folks to know about Dave Tilley is that he does not drink coffee. And because of that, I didn't trust you for many years, but I can, attest to your honesty and your intelligence and your ability. And I, even though you don't drink coffee, I completely trust you. So the listeners, I just want to put that out there. You can trust what he says here today.
Well, Chad, I actually have dabbled in the last 2 months again. Yeah. So after I think it's like 3.5 year hiatus, I weighed the pros and cons that I was sleeping and I was not healthy, but I enjoy a good cup of coffee with my friend. Coffee shop, and I really enjoy playing cards with my dad on like holidays and stuff, drinking coffee. So I am also buried in research projects right now and stuff with shifts. So I have here a small black coffee just for this moment. I saved them for things like this so I can be extra intelligent for you.
You have no idea how much that pleases me. I trust you even more. I'm even more excited for this recording for sure. But I was going to ask you, the first question is that do you have the great mobility that you have because you don't drink coffee? So we don't even need to go there now because it's not true.
Nah, I was lucky with that from gymnastics, little God-given talent and genetics plus hardcore coach. So together, those two things got me good.
Yeah, absolutely. Like you said, you were a former gymnast in college, did a lot of collegiate gymnastics. And don't hold that against him either, because he works with a lot of CrossFitters, a lot of weightlifters as a PT, and you've done
You said on a Power Monkey podcast that I moved the barbell well, and I almost peed myself with how excited I was. Like, Chad thinks I can snatch and clean and jerk. Okay.
Well, you do move a barbell very well. And the reason is because you have great mobility, great flexibility, and you've gotten into those extreme positions, the key positions for weightlifting, to solidify those ranges of motion that you have. And yeah, you look and you move very, very well. But, that being said, the topic that we're going to cover right now for this episode is just about mobility in general. How can someone improve their mobility, whatever area of their body is limited, or overall mobility, their body overall? What does the research currently say as to how that's best accomplished?
Yeah, I think when you and I were talking about you kicking this podcast off, I found mine was almost like an error on my side of the podcast is if you don't have some of these foundational concepts kind of laid out, it gets challenging as you get into deeper conversations about the shoulder or the hip or the ankle, because these things kind of universally apply. So I work in a lot, obviously gymnastics is an aesthetic sport, so mobility is a big part of it. But like you said, we work with a lot of CrossFitters, we work with a lot of Olympic weightlifters, we work with a lot of people who are interested in improving their mobility. So I just want to quickly share maybe some things that I've learned from reading a lot of the research and working with a lot of people. And then from there, hopefully that will help your listeners maybe have something to lean back on. So at the big picture, something that's really important to remember is that all joints in our body, they kind of have two main categories of things that make somebody mobile, right? So you have things that we call passive stabilizers, and then we have things that are more dynamic or active stabilizers, right? So passive things are the way your bones and joints are just inherently designed. And then everybody has, ligaments and joint capsules that are kind of around those joints. I always tell people that it's kind of like saran wrap wrapped around that joint, right? So your shoulder joint, you can picture like your shirt sleeve is that joint capsule. Generally speaking, you can't change those things because they're kind of the way you're born. They're kind of your genetics. And some people can develop with more time under tension, with more practice. They can increase those, particularly capsular things. But speaking from experience on a medical provider, is you don't really want to mess with that kind of stuff. So that's kind of like one bucket. The thing you can change, which is what the majority of what people we give them for interventions and stuff are going to be these dynamic stabilizers. So muscles, right? Muscles, and the more particularly the passive range of those muscles, but also the stretch tolerance of those muscles, which comes together a little bit with your nervous system. And so I think that's kind of where most people can make really good, solid changes. So with that being said, if you look at the research on what seems to work to improve mobility, there's a couple studies that are really great. One is a systematic review from Thomas in 2018, which is a systematic review is just look at all the evidence, smush it all together in one study and try to get conclusions out of that, or a meta-analysis too. So what they found is that, different types of stretching do work if they're consistently done. So I think that is always what you and I at camp and many other people, I try to preach people is before you look up the best exercise on Instagram for front rack mobility, or you try to do the best program like crazy, get an assessment and then find something you can consistently do based off that assessment. And that's probably going to be the most important place to start. So the research in that study showed that 5 to 6 days per week was probably the most effective dose. Doing something, 2 sets of 30 seconds in those 5 to 6 days seems to be what makes progress, whether that's a static stretch, whether that's like a bottom position hold, whether that's a contract, relax stretch, whether that's some form of passive stretching where somebody like a kettlebell is helping you. I think that's the biggest thing to start with, is that the research supports assessments and consistently done mobility work is way better than anything else you're going to find as a hack or a trick or something like that. So that's really important to keep in mind. And then also there is really good support that eccentrics are very, very useful to try and help maintain mobility or to improve mobility. Within this kind of stretching or mobility bucket, generally we're either trying to make changes on the tissue itself. So maybe make muscles more relaxed or compliant over time to increase range of motion, or we're trying to change the nervous system's tone or tolerance to the discomfort of a stretch. The majority of the research now, I would say it's probably 75-25, suggests that consistent stretching work and mobility work is probably changing the resting tone of the muscle and also changing the tolerance to discomfort when you feel the stretch. And that's why you gain passive range of motion. There are some studies that show that consistent stretching and mobility work will change the length of a muscle over time or the stiffness of a tendon. But I think it's probably, again, more leaning towards the neurological side as of the research that I understand it right now. So a little bit of a mouthful there, but essentially we're trying to, consistently do something with stretching, eccentrics, and strength and conditioning balance technique, using those positions consistently. That's probably how you're going to make the most impact on your mobility.
Yeah, that's great. I'm excited to hear that. I of course hear you talk a lot, but I didn't know exactly what was going to come out of your mouth today. But as you threw all that out there, it excites me even more about what I'm trying to do with barbell mobility. And one, barbell mobility, as it stands, the app and what is purchased on a monthly basis is a general program. But it is focusing on the bottom position one day, start position, front rack, and then overhead. And the big thing about those mobility warm-ups that I'm giving out is that there are, general mobility drills that aren't necessarily individualized for anyone. But the big key there is that I am very frequently getting athletes into these key positions. And so for me, yes, I want to change the mobility for anyone that needs to change their mobility, and I want to improve it. But really more than that, it's about increasing their comfort. And so when you talk about neurological changes, to me, that's what comfort means, is you increasing your comfort and your ability to relax where you need to relax in these key positions. It's so important for weightlifting. It's so important for being under a barbell. So, to hear you say that, and that the research is leading to that is very exciting. Now, on the other end, of course, especially if you're limited significantly in any one area or 2 areas or 3 areas, however many areas you're extremely limited in, it's going to serve you better to individualize a little bit. And we're always working on other ways that we can incorporate some individualization, that we can direct athletes to individualization as needed, that they can use along with the the general overall barbell mobility program, it becomes very easy to plug individualized drills into that, or to do them alongside of that. Because again, remember that barbell mobility is so much about getting you into these key positions, getting you into the key positions in an exaggerated fashion, meaning that
Right.
if you, I'm not just going to put you in a snatch grip overhead squat, I'm going to put you in a narrow grip overhead squat, meaning whatever you can handle, but it's going to make it harder.
Right.
And then therefore, the more you do that, the easier and more comfortable you'll be with the snatch grip overhead squat. Or I'm going to have you hold a bar overhead and push back beyond the alignment of your head, again, exaggerating that position. We'll do the same thing for the front rack. We'll do the same thing for the bottom position, and we'll do the same thing for the start position. So exaggerated positions are very important for you to, again, improve that comfort as well. Now, one of the things that you said, of course, or a couple of things that you said, one, consistency. Again, yes, here's the thing. Like, I think if someone can consistently do a mobility program, yes, it matters some what they're doing, but I think I would rather them do that than not do anything at all. They're going to move their body through ranges of motion, and it's the more individualized it is, the better. But if you can get on a consistent routine and you can make that routine, again, then it becomes easier for you to make changes and experiment with other forms of mobility. And when you do come to the point to individualize, if you do, it's easier to add that to your program or your routine, because you're already used to doing something for mobility. So at least do something, right? But then off of that, on another note, you talked about eccentrics. So can you give us some examples of specifically what you're talking about there? Say for maybe one example for each of the key positions that we're talking about. Bottom position, what is an eccentric that we can use to assist in improving that position, or an area of the body, say the ankle, or whatever may be limited on the individual, to help them improve that specific part of the body, to therefore improve the bottom position?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, kind of circling back to a point you made that's really good, is that consistency. Well, you and I obviously would love everyone to have that individual program. The reality is that because of your experience and because of what we know about these patterns, there are certain muscle groups or certain positions that you need to just train every day to be successful, right? And so, like, the starting position, right? Like, we know the posterior chain, the hamstrings, and some of that hinging motion is going to be really important. So if your goal is to pull from the floor, you probably need to make sure you work that consistently every day, which is one of the benefits to your program. Is like, of course, you could get in the weeds about specifics, but like, to have a consistent program that you can just open up and do every single day, to know you're getting the right things you need, that's super important, right? Especially on someone on a busy schedule. So I just want to mention that. But yeah, so
let me just let me add to that real quick, because you make a great point, and one that I meant to make as well, is that if you are getting into these key positions and you're moving through full ranges of motion, there's individualization there already,
right?
Because you're going, like, if you're pausing in the bottom of a squat, whether that's, if you're very limited in the bottom of the squat, honestly, an air squat isn't the best one to do to help you change your mobility. You need some weight, you need some assistance, which is why, we do a lot of the things that we do. But let's just say you're pausing in the bottom of a front squat. Wherever you're limited, as long as you're at those end ranges, you're going to be working on the most limited parts of your body. That's where the stress is going to go, and that's where the changes is going to be made. And that's why we do a combination of getting you into your normal regular position, but also making it harder, but also making it easier. So we do a lot of elevated heel squats, with front overhead, or any bottom position drill that you're going to see. There's going to be 2 inches of elevation indicated, or 1 inch, no elevation. We do some for those that can handle it with your toes elevated. Again, that's making it harder, but because you're making it easier, normal, and harder, you get a good range of ensuring that you're getting to a depth with quality, at least on some of your reps, where you can help improve the mobility of the parts of your body that you need to improve.
Right. Yeah, for sure. And I'll promise I'll come back to eccentrics, but you're just making so many good points that
you're good.
I agree with you that I think in the coaching in the medical world, sometimes there's this concern about exaggerated positions with warm-ups and stuff, but you have to realize that we are trying to encourage exaggerated positions because it's no load. You're not putting 315 on your
Right.
back, right? So
Right.
we're safe to do this, but also someone's goals are to clean and snatch and to do whatever else it is. We're trying to prepare their body for the worst possible scenario,
Yeah.
right? Because you and I know that when you are 90+% and above, you're going to be forced into your full range of motion by the weight. And so I use a lot of your warm-ups that I learned 5 or so years ago with exaggerated toe positions and stuff for patients, medical patients who are coming back, and you can see them struggle with depths or struggle with their feet position because when you're warming up, it's like an insurance policy we're trying to build that, like you taught me before, if you start outside your feet hip width with your toes turned out, and then you try to squat and you jump further, and now you're in an exaggerated, not so great position. Well, we need to try to break down the pieces, flexibility wise to get you there. But then the warm up, try to go exaggerated if you're comfortable there, so that when you are put into a position of compromise, you're going to be more in a narrow envelope there where you can work. So I think it's important for people to realize that those exaggerated positions, if they're appropriate, are building that consistency, but also we're trying to build your insurance policy around some of these positions. And again, we've had long discussions about this. This is for people who have goals that want these things. And so that's what we're trying to do, right? It's not always appropriate to give someone a super low front squat if they're like, I never want to clean. It's like, okay, well, you're not in our bucket of wheelhouse. That's fine. Enjoy your life, have fun. But a lot of people that you and I work with come to us with the goals of cleaning, jerking, and snatching. And so I think it's important to clarify that, because a lot of medical providers don't understand why we promote these extreme positions and exaggerated positions, and they kind of bark at us a little bit. But it's like, well, people have goals to clean heavy, and so we're trying to promote that. But all right, back to eccentric.
Yes. Oh, we could talk. I mean, I could just go back and forth with you forever on that. So yeah, let's branch off and get to the eccentrics now.
Sure. Yeah. So back to the conversation of, what are we doing? How are we trying to change the tissue? We have that kind of changing the nervous system, and then we have changing the actual tissue itself. And I will not go way down the rabbit hole here. I'll keep it pretty non-geeky, but essentially most of the things that we think are affecting, right? So stretching, soft tissue work, consistent stuff, all that, most of it is changing the nervous system's tolerance to those end ranges and stretches, the discomfort of stretch. They're called nociceptors, right? So people who are trying to find digger here, or trying to dig in deeper here. But there is evidence that stretching and other things do affect the actual tissue length itself and the actual tendon length and some of the capsular motion itself. So you can change that a little bit. It's debated, but it's probably a little bit of both, right? Nothing is black or white. So with that being said, one thing I think we have some decent support of theoretically to change the mechanical tissue is really good strength and conditioning programs, but particularly eccentric contractions, because there's a really good review by O'Sullivan in 2013 in BJSM, I think, and there's been a couple of recent papers showing this too. But there seems to be something about elongated positions of contraction, which is what an eccentric contraction is, that is probably either just like stretching on steroids, right? It's overload to that stretching position. It's exaggerating the end range position, or again, don't want to go down the rabbit hole. There are some thoughts that the tension through the muscle and through the tendon complex are causing some what are called epigenetic changes for the body to adapt into that elongated position. So maybe that tension is causing some sort of change where your body's like, whoa, this is pretty intense. We want to try to build something to build more tolerance against this. But eccentrics and the protocol that Dan Pope and I usually use with people, and we teach at Power Monkey Camp, is some sort of loaded motion for 5 repetitions of a 5-second lower with a 5-second bottom position hold, trying to do a couple sets of those every day. And again, there's not a ton of great research. We have some good research studies in like Romanian deadlifts with overload to barbell RDLs, and we have some other stuff on hamstrings for that. But we try to extrapolate that data and apply it to the things that we think make a difference, and we use tests and measures to see if we're making progress. So I think you said what, bottom position, starting position, bottom receiving position, overhead, and front rack are the 4 you guys kind of go for. Yeah.
Right.
So if we talk about the starting position, right, you need a really good hinge, and you need quite a bit of posterior chain or hamstring mobility. So that would be a really good situation where a Romanian deadlift maybe out of the rack, or if you can have somebody help you, right, you would unrack it and you would do a 5-second lower of a stiff-legged RDL, 5-second lower to the position where you feel as though it's quite a bit of tension, but also you're not compromising your back position or something like that. You would hold that bottom position for 5 seconds, and then maybe you would either have friends pick it up, or you would squat it back up, or you do pick it up. But the lowering 5 seconds is really what you're going for. So you could do that with a barbell double leg deadlift. We also like doing this sometimes with a kickstand or a single leg RDL if someone's really stiff on one side of their leg versus the other. So we do those quite a bit. For the bottom position hold, I think usually the best go-to one is a goblet squat. Mm-hmm. So you would goblet squat, 5 second lower, 5 second hold at the bottom, again, with a position that feels comfortable for you, slightly exaggerated. You would, hold that for 5 seconds at the bottom position with really good tension, put the kettlebell down on the floor, deadlift that back up and pull it back up to the clean position and start in a goblet. So you're just riding the eccentric all the way down, but that will help establish the bottom position. And I think, as I've learned from you, we do a lot of holds at the bottom where you're holding the rack and you're pulling your feet forward, which is awesome for the ankles and stuff. But it seems to be that overload of the goblet squat for some reason helps that bottom position.
Yeah,
that would be 2. For the overhead position, I mean, this is not new to some of the listeners, but like eccentric chin up lowers or lat long are really, really good for us. So jumping up to a chin up bar in a curled up position, reverse grip to make the lats be on tension with a dumbbell between your feet. 5 second lower, 5 second bottom hold. That's one of Dave Durani's favorites. And then for the front rack position, it gets a little bit trickier here, but we do like doing some front rack, like push press eccentric lowers, right? So find a grip and a width that's good for you, push jerk or push press up some weight, and then do a 5 second lower all the way down, and then hold that front rack position at the bottom. That's good for a couple of reasons. One is that eccentric pressing is really good to build the cuff strength and build up like your front rack strength in general, but also that can be a helpful eccentric overload to the front rack position, pending that, you find a grip width that's comfortable. It's not going to feel like your elbows are exploding when you start. You don't want to exaggerate too much to start with because you can sometimes stress the inside of the elbow, but generally you can find a comfortable position.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And that you've got my wheels turning now. You might need to add a little bit more of that into the barbell mobility program. In general, we do a lot of chin up negatives in the program on a fairly frequent basis. But certainly for anyone that I've worked with, who has especially specific lat tightness, maybe is their main area of limitation for their front rack or overhead. It's something that I would give them on a more regular basis. We do a lot of in the program, I think you call them the hamstring leg lowers. Yep. In the barbell mobility program, they're called hamstring leg lifts. So where those are, we're wanting you to move slower, but then pairing those with either just a regular Romanian deadlift with the bar, with the kettlebell, or single leg Romanian deadlifts, and with those indicating, a 3 to 5 second lower with the 3 to 5 second hold in your stretch position. And again, when I'm saying your stretch position, I'm talking about where you can get where you're feeling a stretch, but without, bending the knee too much and or rounding the back any at all. So you're in that quality position. But yeah, a lot of that stuff, I think just by nature is in the program, but I think something we could look into and step up a little bit more. And one of the things that I do for my right ankle, I've talked about this I think I talked about this with Dr. Aaron Horschig when we covered ankle, but I'll do a combination of rolling out the bottom of my foot, and then 5 to 10 ankle rocks, either with or without a band, depending on what I have access to, and then I'll do 10 calf raises. So this is similar to what you're talking about, but now again, you got me thinking. I think I could add some slow eccentric to those calf raises, maybe do 10 calf raises and then do a slow eccentric down to the in range, 5 seconds, 5 second hold there, and then maybe 5 to 10 more ankle rocks, and then go into the squat drill that I'm using. Yep.
That's worth adding here too, is I think it's really good sometimes to do the one-legged variations because you can focus more on that eccentric, right? So if you do a kickstand deadlift, you can kickstand RDL down with 2 heavy kettlebells or a barbell, put your other foot down and concentrically stand up on 2 legs, right? So you're just focusing on the negative. And the other thing that just popped into my mind that's really good too is I enjoy sometimes if someone really struggles with, sometimes people have like one really stiff shoulder or one really stiff elbow when they try to front rack. So that's the bottleneck when they do their barbell work. But you can also do this with kettlebells or dumbbells. So you could put 2 kettlebells and you could push jerk and do a negative on each side, because that will free up a little bit more side to side asymmetry. So a lot of people struggle with one versus the other. And you made a really good point that something I'm a big fan of, even in the gymnastics world, which has got some archaic flexibility methods, is I think rather than doing 3 straight sets of passive stretching and waiting for 5 minutes to work on that. Obviously the research supports that, but there's so many things the research support around that. So you're probably better off picking one thing or one drill you really know helps for you and doing those in a little bit of a circuit, right? So a little soft tissue to the bottom of the foot, a little bit of the calf raises, a little bit of the bottom squat hold, because you're trying to encourage a lot of different ways to make that mobility stick. So that's what I teach people too quite a bit as well, is there's definitely a role for, some straight sets, but I would rather see someone do, like you said, roll for 30 seconds and then do 5 eccentric lowers and then do some sort of an ankle rocker at the wall and then go do a bottom goblet hold for 5 reps. You're probably going to dip into the research of what everything might be working for and smush those together. The net gain is probably a little bit more effective there.
Absolutely. And I believe that so much. And I feel like it's what I've seen, a lot of the stuff that I've learned from you and Pope at camp that I've, incorporated into my teaching and the mobility drills that I give athletes, but it's always, I mean, at the end of some of my programs, I'll have like a mobility cool down where there might be some smashing or something like that. But I'm starting to even there get into, if I'm doing 2 different smashing drills or whatever the type of mobility I'm using at the end of the workout is, I want to pair that with a movement. So whether it be a light Romanian deadlift, or even just 5 air squats, anything to help the body, I believe, uptake the drills that you just did. So instead of just leaving them alone, but anyone that's been on the barbell mobility program and have done any amount of those warm-ups know that that's basically all it is just circuits. It's circuits of, pairing mobility drills with specific movement or with specific holds in the front rack or the overhead. Maybe that's only in the standing position for the day. Or maybe it's only you holding the bottom position instead of doing air squats on a day, but it's always a circuit. And I believe in the strength of that so much, to help people, again, make the changes if you need to make change. But again, more than anything, is about comfort and the ability to relax where you need to relax, and all those things that we're looking for. We want to help individuals. What you do on a daily basis, Dave, is you want to help individuals, for you, be out of pain, to be able to move and do the things that they want, but to ultimately reach their goals, not only reach their goals, but reach their potential, because your actual potential may be higher than the goals that you have,
Sure.
and that's the thing. And all that stuff, that's what all this is about, is helping individuals reach their potential. I'm passionate about mobility in this part of the game. And I know that a lot of weightlifting coaches that I've talked to are confident in their ability to teach weightlifting, to teach technique, to program, but they feel they're a little limited in this area. So this is something that, just like ROM Water Go Wad, that you can add to the program that you're on without needing to change anything, just 10 minutes, or any mobility that you need, or anything extra that you need to do. It's not a knock on your coach. It is just, what we're finding out with CrossFit athletes, weightlifting athletes, gymnastics athletes, is that maybe you need more than one source to help you be the best that you can be. It takes a, what do they say? It takes a tribe, and I think that's true for anybody and anything that you're trying to do. And looking back on my career, I can certainly see that it took more than just me, myself, and one coach. There was multiple coaches that I came across through my career that taught me different things, that helped me become the athlete that I could be. My family, my friends, all those things need to come together. So pay attention to this area, mobility in general, and this overall overview that we had here, Dave. I loved. And before we wrap it up, is there anything that you want to add?
No, I think just summarizing, all the main points is like you just so well illustrated, is sometimes I think people unfortunately are doing a little bit, it's a shotgun approach and not a sniping approach. And they sometimes get really frustrated here. And so I think for me in the encouragement of you in the program stuff is because you have to realize, and we see this all the time at camp, is that sometimes if you just took a step back and figured out the bottleneck of one thing that might be holding you back, like you said, to your potential, we see a lot of times that people are spinning their wheels and are frustrated because they don't have a direct line of attack to that one thing that's problematic. So I think we see that a lot. And my buddy, Nick Ruddick, who's a really high level gymnastics coach on the international stage, we talk about like the basics of the basics, right? Like you have your positions and you have your skills, but what are the basics to get into those positions? And so say, for example, if your shoulder mobility is the thing that's limiting you, if we could take a step back and just figure out, with a good warm-up program and a consistently done program, if we can improve your shoulder soft tissue mobility by 10%, well, maybe that's going to improve your front rack position and that will improve your overhead position. Well, you just got a much better clean position receiving. You got a much better jerk position to start, and you get a much better overhead receiving position for your jerk when you actually catch it. That's a huge potential increase there because you found the common denominator. And so I think that's where people should think about this, is not as one more thing, as you said. It's like, well, we're trying to find the bottlenecks here. We're trying to find, and if you're a CrossFit athlete, it also helps with your overhead position and your handstands and your toes to bar and everything, right? So like working with that tribe and finding the couple things that are really problematic for you is like, you always talk about that one thing, right? What's that one thing that I can get at? For some people, it's a baseline level of my shoulder can't move enough to get in the position that I want. And that's where a coach gets frustrated. It's like, I would love to program more for you and help you more, but like every time we get to this point, your technique and stuff gets limited by this one bottleneck, the basic of the basics. So take it as an opportunity to maybe fix that one thing and see everything else improve.
Absolutely. Love it. Love it. Thank you so much for the information today. I always want to ask one last question to the guest. And the one that we're going to go with for you today, Dave, is what are you currently most excited about kind of in your career? Anything that you're working on specifically, or what's going on?
I'm really, really fortunate that the position that I'm at with Shift, and particularly in gymnastics, is, I don't know how I got here, but a lot of important people value my opinion for some really hard problems in gymnastics situation right now. So we have 3 or 4 research projects that we just kicked off and that are actively going right now that I think are going to be very potentially impactful for the sport. So one on workloads, one on Achilles ruptures, and a couple more that we're starting about like rehab protocols. So it is one of the reasons I started drinking coffee again, because I have quite a bit of work to do, but I'm very grateful for the opportunity to make a positive impact with research and with the college and in the elite programs that hopefully the next generation of kids growing up will be a little bit more better off. So very flattering. I don't get paid for it. So it's a lot of good faith and will work, but it's the right thing to do. And so I'm excited for that.
Awesome. Love it. Well, I know you're doing a great job and you're going to do a great job. As always, appreciate everything that I've learned from you, and it's helped me certainly become a better coach and someone that's better able to provide mobility drills and sequences to athletes and coaches out there. So thank you for what you do, Dave, and thank you for your time today.
Likewise, buddy. Always a pleasure.